Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
School legends thread. Post stories or rumors you heard at a school you went to, like X killed him or her and X. Or the reason why X is no longer served in the cafeteria is because of X.
North Carolina friend here. My elementary school was regularly terrorized between 4th and 5th grade for me. There was some guy who wore dark clothes, a covered face, and drove a red station wagon. Always remember that description by heart from all the flyers and posters sent home to parents. That was spotted numerous times trespassing onto the playground during recess, trying to lure students or approaching them outright. This eventually escalated to us having to take our classes in small trailers because there was a break-in during the night, and the staff was worried he was hiding somewhere on school grounds. They were given the all clear, but things started going missing from classrooms like lunch bags, both empty and full, backpacks, and in one case I know some girls' pen pal letters had some kind of really disturbing photo of a dead animal or something slipped in there, and the letter was replaced with something really sick. Her parents actually pulled her from school. We went back to the trailers for a while, and we saw faculty talking to police a bunch of times when we got to school. By the end of 4th grade, things went back to normal. But at some point during 5th, he started showing up again, and I actually saw him myself outside the new fence put around the school. He was wearing really dirty-looking dark clothes and a jacket, and I remember he was looking as far down as he possibly could. He had sunglasses and a hat on, and when he saw us spot him, he kept pointing at his station wagon's wheels and making a face like he needed help and kept waving us over. It was actually me that piped up, "Is that him? Is that the guy?" and ran off to get help. By the time I got our teacher, he was gone, and she called the police. They were asking the kids I left behind what they saw. I remember wishing I had stayed because the police pulled them out of class to talk to them and they got to miss work. We went back to the trailers again after that because apparently any time he was spotted after this, a bomb threat was called in. Most of this I never knew at the time. My 4th grade teachers told my mom most of it, and she told me when I was nearly finished with junior high. Really creepy shit when you look back on it. Wonder if he ever got caught or managed to prey on anyone.
In kindergarten, one of my friends was going down the slide and jumped off at the bottom, but fell and her head hit the concrete a short distance away from the slide. She scraped her forehead and was bleeding. They got her inside before anyone but me. The one who was playing with her at the time noticed what happened. What was creepy was that I witnessed the whole thing, but when I saw one of the teachers cleaning up the blood, she kept insisting she had just spilled paint. It wasn't blood at all. I kept telling her I knew it was blood, I knew what I had seen, but she said she had been clumsy and that I was imagining things. Because my friend had fallen, but there was no blood at all. The creepiest part is that I'm not totally sure who this friend was, and if she was okay after all because I've forgotten her name, and when I asked my mom, she didn't remember either. She withdrew me from that school after I told her about the blood and the teacher who said it was just paint.
California State, Fullerton. There's 2 places that are haunted. The basement of the library where all of the media stuff is. Supposedly you can hear screaming and there are wild temperature changes. I didn't have classes down there, but the old side of the library is spoopy enough on its own. There is the humanities building on the top floor. There are 2 garden areas on each side where people could go at one time. I was there in the 2000s and both sides were locked. I also never even noticed those were there till one day I was feeling depressed and wanted to be away from everyone. Walking around campus, I could have sworn I saw someone looking over the top of the humanities area. So, I get to the, I think 8th floor, and at the end of the hallway is this door. Locked. So I get to the other side with a similar layout, also locked. I think it might be a teacher's lounge of some sort and move on. A couple of years later, I have a class next to the door, so I see it all the time. Again, when my stress is high and dread of being a failure is overwhelming, I see out of the corner of my eye as I round the corner that door shut. I walk over to it and grab the handle. Locked. The handle is hot to the touch, uncomfortable but not scalding. It's morning and 56 degrees overcast outside where this door leads to. I must have not realized that I had been there a while because my professor was behind me and startled me. He notes my fascination with the patio area and explains that they have been permanently locked. No one can access it. He goes on that it was a popular self-termination spot in Orange County. As a result, they removed all items from the patio and closed it off. He explained that stories of the door being open or people standing overlooking the quad from there have gone around from time to time. He then pointed out that whatever was worrying me is only temporary and things always fluctuate from good to bad, and surviving the bad makes the good more worthwhile. I didn't tell him I was depressed.
Went on a university ghost tour. Didn't see any ghosts, but these were the stories we were told. Library is a building within a building, designed to preserve old architecture. Open 24/7 during the school year, except on Sunday to Monday night. Students have reported laughing voices in the dead of night. Also reports of bouncing balls of light in the deeper stacks. Electronics reportedly do not function well inside the library. Phones were particularly prone to loss of signal or sudden battery drain. The old science building is torn down, only the tower remains. Used to house a radio show which has moved to the Student Union building. Radio show hosts late at night would report hearing someone running in the halls, but never see anyone there. Occasionally, radio signals would just cut out for no reason. One building housed a small museum in its basement before the basement flooded due to burst pipes in winter. The museum had repeated haunting reports varying from cold spots and touching to things being thrown around the room. The lamp was never disturbed, but often in the center of various events. A student was struck by a car sitting on the curb in front of her dorm building. Died on impact. Later, residents of the room complained of haunting activity so frequently that it and a neighboring room were converted into a lounge. A different building was an old house purchased and converted into a small dorm. The building used to house a women's shelter. Haunting reports include residents seeing badly beaten women crying in the halls, a particular rocking chair moving while a baby wails, and doors would slam and lock themselves without any drafts or other influences.
It ain't very paranormal, but back in my high school there ran an urban legend for a little while. You see, there was this kid who hung himself a few cities away back in the day. He was from a school I moved from, so I actually knew him. Name was Aaron, if I recall correctly. Anyway, he self-terminated himself, and so a lot of parents, teachers, staff, whatever, were getting real freaked out about it and realized teenage self-termination was a serious problem. Our school had these special servers set up so teachers could see what their students were doing at any time. On any school computer, tablet, whatever was on the computer network. So, a week or so after the self-termination, a bunch of people started talking about how the teachers were watching everything the students were doing. And because you had to log in with student accounts, the idea was, if you searched up anything related to self-termination, murder, weaponry, whatever, the school principal would go out of his way to have a heart-to-heart with you and get you the rest of the school day in the counselor's office. I never investigated, but it's always been in the back of my head.
Not really a story I heard, but the woods behind my old school, middle school and high school in the same building, were pretty weird. It was eerily quiet. It was down a 10-foot incline from the school's playground. That part was fenced off for the younger kids. The older kids only had a picnic table way too close to the edge for my liking, and a basketball hoop and some basketballs. We'd lose them a lot over the hill, and I'd usually be the guy who went to get them back. The first obvious oddity was the shell of a car that's been there so long a fully grown tree grew right through the windshield. The weird part is, it's pretty much free metal, and there are a lot of people looking to recycle metal for a quick buck. But they never went after this thing for some reason. Pretty much no one but me and a few other guys ever went into those woods, really. And there was a full, undamaged truck after about a 5-minute walk from the school that was abandoned out there for some reason. I think it was a fire truck, the right size and shape anyway. That's about as far as any of us got. We'd always chicken out and go back at that point. Hell, I'm pretty sure the school either closed down or changed locations since I graduated about 3 years ago. I could probably go there with a camera, film stuff, and post it to /x/ like a bunch of threads are doing lately. On the other hand, there are snakes there. I never actually saw one, but apparently that place is full of snakes.
There was a bathroom on the far side of my elementary school which everybody, teachers and students, seemed to agree it was just off and stayed away from. It was said that you could see things in the mirrors, figures behind you, subtle differences and problems in your reflection. I was in there once, and it was a long time ago, but I remember thinking there was definitely something wrong. It had that creepy, unnatural stillness, which felt especially weird since bathrooms like it are usually crowded places, you know? And I checked the mirror thing and thought my reflection was subtly messed up. At a glance it looked like me, but on closer inspection it had a sickly, sallow quality. Different shaped face? I don't know. I only looked at it for 20 seconds and then hurried out, but it's always stuck with me. I remember some kids pushed a friend of theirs in there, shut the lights, and barred the door as a prank, and he came out crying pretty hysterically, insisting he heard something bad moving around in there. But maybe he was just primed by all the stories. I heard from a friend whose younger brother went there until recently that they just lock the door now.
My elementary school dates back to the 1920s, though it was remodeled, expanded in the 70s if I recall correctly. But in 1994 they built a new school building and repurposed the old one as an extended day facility. If your parents worked late and you didn't have a ride home, you could stay there until they were off work. The interesting thing, though, was the old school's layout. It was built like a motel with no hallways and all the classroom entrances outdoors. And as luck would have it, my room was right across from the creepy old basement boiler room with its disgusting rotted wood doors that probably hadn't been used in 50 years. Supposedly it was haunted by a ghost named Jeremiah who had been mistakenly locked in there back in the 50s and starved to death. I swear I saw him one day. I'll green text out the story below. Be playing around with other kids by basement doors. One big bruiser asshole decides to show how tough he is, kicks in the old doors. Everyone is shocked. It's common knowledge that an evil ghost lives in there. Next day, had to stay at school late, walking to the extended day classroom alone. Kinda spooked out. Reached the classroom, no one is there, not especially unusual. Sometimes they'd go to another room to watch a movie or something since our room had no TV. Start heading to another room, pass a spooky basement. Suddenly an intense feeling of dread. Instinctively I know someone is standing right behind me. Spin around to see who it is. Swear to God I saw a hand on my shoulder. No one there. Scream and run to another class, tell everyone my grim tale. No one believes me. Next day I came in and the basement was covered up with giant steel doors. I stopped going there shortly after that, but I visited recently to check it out. The steel doors are still there, but the place has been converted to an art studio. Interestingly enough, by the basement, there's several bottle trees, a type of art piece which in local folklore is supposedly used to trap evil spirits.
The main part of my primary school was relatively new, but there was a smaller old building at the front of it where the year 5 and 6 classrooms were. PIC related, it's the building. At the back, there was a small room where people would go for music lessons, and everyone called it Annie's room. I had to go into the room for flute lessons every week. According to the school legend, there was a woman, Annie, who lived in the room. It was a full-on living space at the time, with an upper floor and everything, with her dog. She ended herself by throwing herself down the stairs during the winter. During the time, the school was unoccupied. Her body and her dog's were found dead. Part of her body had been eaten. Presumably by the dog, I guess. I had a few spooks during my time there that scared the hell out of my 8-year-old self. Sometimes when I arrived at the room, the door blocking the stairs would be wide open. I'd just stay outside the room until the teacher came, for fear of being spooked further. Other times, sheet music would be found scattered everywhere. At one point, I was in the room, teacher had left already, packing up with another student, when his sheet music flew off the stand. We just stared for a second before getting the fresh out of there. One thing I'll never forget, though. By the old building, there was a massive field where all the kids would play and stuff. You'd have to pass it to get to the room. God, I'll never forget this. I was walking down the path when I heard a panting noise like how a dog would make. I looked over at the field, and there was a huge black dog staring straight at me. He didn't look hostile or anything. He just stared at me as I walked past. I was pretty zoned out for the rest of the day. It was just Surreal? I guess. Nobody believed me, though.
People used to claim that our high school was cursed because every year one person from the highest, oldest group of students would die somehow horribly and suddenly. The school opened with 8th, 9th, and 10th grade students to start. After the first year, the 8th grade students went back to the middle school they were associated with. It was a temporary situation due to overcrowding. About 2/3 of the way through the first year, a 10th grade student hanged himself in the gazebo near his house. The next year, an 11th grade student was killed in a car crash coming back from off-campus classes. The year after that, a 12th grade student died suddenly in class. She just fell over. Paramedics were called, but she died before arriving at hospital. The official statement was a congenital heart defect that had never been diagnosed, which had launched a clot that caused a stroke and killed her within moments. The next year, another 12th grader was stabbed through the throat during an altercation outside of a movie rental shop. He instigated with the knife in hand. The other guy defended himself, knife through the throat. The year after that, another fatal car accident. And so on. I honestly believed a lot of the deaths were the result of the pressure of living in that area. Extremely competitive in sports, academics, and even band. Lots of pressure to take advanced honors courses and be in the top 10% of the class, but always 300 to 600 students competing against you, etc. But who knows with regards to some of the freak deaths like the car crashes or the stroke one.
My high school had a curse like this also. It's only been around for 10 years. Every year, at least one student dies. The difference is they weren't all popular or in the higher academic classes. They also usually died as a result of a chain of events Final Destination style. It's pretty crazy. I graduated years ago, but my younger brother attends it now. 2 weeks ago, some girl was beaten with a laptop by another girl and was sent to the hospital. She died of internal bleeding Saturday.
I went to a rehabilitation youth health center. Don't know what it's called. It's basically this hospital-type place where youth with mental issues, drug addiction, and just general issues go to get things sorted out. And we had 2 buildings that were both used for a certain group. The center divided kids into 3 programs, an optional stay that lasted a month, an optional stay that lasted 3 months, and a court-ordered stay that lasted 3 months. I was in the 3-month one, and most of the kids that weren't insane were in the 1 month. The 1-month program had 2 buildings, one which had the attendants and kids, and the other just became used as a counseling area. I asked some of the kids about it, and what I was told was that a young girl killed took her life in there, so they moved us all to this building. I thought it was bull, so I asked my attendant about it, which he confirmed a girl actually hung herself in that building. I wasn't told why she did it, who she was, or why she was even there, but I lost contact with my attendant since I was there.
I live in a small town, and the entire 2nd grade had one school to themselves. It was built in the 1800s. This school ghost story goes like this. It was winter, and a girl just came inside the school. She was heading towards the bathroom and on the stairs, which was only a few feet away from the bathroom. She slipped and fell because the stairs were wet from earlier when the students entered the building because it was wet from the snow. Apparently, she died there and haunted the bathroom. Eventually, every girl was scared and would claim to hear things in the bathroom. We'd use the stall closest to the door and run out as fast as possible, not even thinking of washing our hands. The weird thing about this bathroom was that there was fingerprints on the very top of the mirror. They were dark red like blood, what we thought it was back then, but it could have been painted. It was weird because it was only about 3.5 fingers showing. The weird thing is that the hand was upside down. Someone couldn't have simply done it. They had to be lifted and upside down to put the fingerprints on the mirror like that. I remember showing my mom at a conference asking how that could happen. I've also heard clunks when I did use the restroom. Only one could go at a time during class, so everyone was afraid. Another story from that school is that the attack is haunted. It was once used, but was now closed off. No one has ever been there before, so it was a mystery. We'd always think vampires lived in the tower too.
Hope College. Holland, Michigan? There are these train tracks that cut right through campus about a half block away from the dorms. Trains would come every night at like 3 a.m., blasting those horns, and it was such a pain to deal with for the first few weeks. But anyway, the spring before my freshman year at Hope started, 2012, some kid ended himself by laying down in front of one of the trains. I transferred after that fall semester because my financial position was worse than I thought, and Hope is expensive. Then the next spring, some Hope girl in my grade got hit by a bus somewhere in Holland and died. No creepy stories from it, but the cafeteria serves popcorn chicken bowls like the KFC ones on Fridays. That was delicious.
Elementary and middle school were haunted. High school not so much. In elementary school during some math class, the entire room ran out screaming because some cabinet just flew open apparently. Teachers tried their best to rationalize it and go about their day, but you can tell the math teach was a little shaken. School crayon boxes fell from desks, and I remember just feeling generally uneasy about being alone anywhere during my higher elementary years. Just stayed with people to feel safe and screw going back to get anything in the classroom if you forgot it in there. Friend wouldn't even go back to get his backpack one day. There was an in-school suspension room upstairs in middle school that was said to be haunted because someone hung themselves in there. Also, the band hall was haunted. Teachers would tell us stories about it with instruments being played and all kinds of noise. I would have loved high school to have been just as haunted, but oh well.
In my primary school, there was a memorial bench honoring an elderly teacher from years ago who died. There was a rumor that he killed and ate kids from the school, so he was executed. There was another story that he self-terminated himself. The bench sat underneath a sort of trellis shelter thing. The kind where you can have ivy growing on it? Don't know the word for it. The trellis shelter was surrounded by small trees instead of ivy. Anyway, on one of the supporting posts there was a knothole the exact shape and size of a leaf from one of the trees. There was a rumor that if you picked every single leaf off those trees and held it to the knothole, one of them would open a secret dungeon underneath the trellis shelter. That's where he kept the kids. He was actually just a really nice teacher who died of old age. My older sisters and parents had him and said he was lovely. Kids are cruel.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.